and let us all do we can to build a better future.
All right, with that being said, let's introduce our awesome guest joining us live. First time, because the last time we had her on our show, it was a recorded interview, but now a promise is a promise, and I have to follow through with it. Joining us live, she is part of this awesome progressive network, Fred Hampton Leftists. They're speaking truth to power. And recently, Sabrina Salvati, also known as Sabby Sabs on Twitter, is also got an extensive...
By the way, a great nickname.
Yep, great. Sabby Sabs, awesome nickname. But also, her channel is also getting a great shout out from Indie Left News, who's done a lot of great work as well. And again, Fred Hampton Leftists, if you don't know who they are, be sure to support them. It's something I've said on the show. I want to see more citizen journalists step up. Sabrina, it's long overdue. Welcome to our show. Please introduce yourself to our viewers and subscribers if they don't know who you are.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on. My name is Sabrina Salvati. I'm the host of Sabby Sabs podcast, and I'm the co-host of the Fred Hampton Leftist podcast.
Now, the thing is, the entire network is growing phenomenally well. You guys are doing a lot of collaboration with a lot of other independent media networks, which is something that we like to see. Again, I encourage everyone, more citizen journalists nationwide. And the thing is, I do want to get your thoughts and opinions on what's happening in Afghanistan, but I think it's very important that we do change subjects real quick and talk about this eviction crisis. Now, again, it's not being talked about as much by corporate media, but again, people are still being evicted from their apartments, from their homes. We're seeing it happen in California. We're seeing it happen in Texas, Illinois. And you mentioned about a certain situation that's happening in Massachusetts. Currently, what is happening there, and how bad is the situation on the ground, and what are the state lawmakers trying to do to really prevent this, to help out working class citizens in the state of Massachusetts?
That's a good question. Actually, we don't know. We are waiting to hear from the governor. As you may know, former Mayor Marty Walsh left early from his position to go work with the Biden administration. So we have an interim mayor in Boston right now, and there's also a mayor race that's coming up as well. But one of the things I will say is that for people saying that COVID caused this issue, I can tell you on a local level, that is not the case. We have had a problem with housing in Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, that whole area for years. And Governor Baker and former Mayor Marty Walsh promised that they would implement more affordable housing units. That has not happened. Instead, they have allowed investors to come in over the years and to implement more condos, to buy apartment buildings. I've had friends that have been pushed out of their apartment buildings because an investor bought it and increased the rent. The rent here has been a problem for a long time, and we have no rent stability. There's no rent freeze. We've asked for these things. We've pleaded for these things. And Marty Walsh was in his second term when he left. And the person who was running against him was Tito Jackson, not the singer. Have to put that out there. But Tito Jackson's main issue that he was running on was the housing situation. It is a huge problem here. It has gotten to the point where it's just as expensive to rent here as it is in New York City. So obviously when COVID happened, what you saw was a lot of companies said you can work remotely. Some companies said you can work remotely forever, indefinitely. So like-minded people were like, why would I pay expensive rent to live in the city if I can work from anywhere? So a lot of people moved out. So then landlords had a crisis because they're like, we can't fill these apartments because some of the students didn't come back. And the students are a big portion of the income for landlords here in the Boston area because we have a lot of colleges. But the problem is they never got a handle on the rent, and landlords have been constantly increasing the rent here. Like I said, we don't have rent stability, so they can increase the rent for as much as they want. And I know that a lot of people submitted rental assistant applications to Massachusetts Department of Housing. 90% were declined. 90%. So we are going into winter, and after this 60 days is up, a lot of people are going to be evicted, and no one wants to be homeless, but no one definitely wants to be homeless during the winter. Where are all these people going to go? We don't have enough shelters to house everybody. And we have the exact opposite as some other cities. Other people I've talked to, like Shahid Buttar, said that in the San Francisco area, they have enough housing to house everybody. We don't have that here. It's been a problem for a long time. We've had a housing shortage. And they never addressed it, they never fixed it. And then COVID happened, and now we have the housing crisis that we have. There were landlords here that were not supposed to increase rent during the eviction moratorium. There were landlords still increasing the rent, and the governor and the mayor did nothing about it. So
Goodness.
it is very concerning.
Wow.
I
Real
just
quick.
wanna say,
Go
just
ahead.
real
Dan.
quick. I mean, I one thing that we've talked about on the show is just like we just had the way we were just covering the end of Afghanistan, is that there's, on top of all this, an enormous amount of people that have housing right now, but they're $8,000 behind on rent, and because of the COVID moratorium have they not been kicked out. Americans aren't going to magically get $8,000. We know the Biden administration will never bail out the people, will never pay back the small mom and pop landlords. They'll likely, if anything, help out the people, the giant behemoths that are going to take everything over once it's done. So we were talking we expected the moratorium to end in the summer, because at least if you're kicking people out then, you're not kicking them out in the winter. I can only imagine how worse the situation there's going to get when all the people that currently have housing, when that moratorium ends, hits.
Exactly. I mean, this has been a problem for a long time. And I've lived here for 10 years. I remember when you could get a 1-bedroom apartment in, Brighton, Alston area, which is where Boston University is, for maybe $900. You can't do that now. And they have allowed this to happen. They have allowed investors to come in and to buy up these apartment buildings. I can't walk 1 block without seeing a new condo building. It is ridiculous. They are basically making the city just for professionals. And even some of the professionals have been priced out.
It seems like something that's shockingly familiar here in Chicago, as we're seeing condos and new buildings being built up. But the same problem that impacts Boston and Chicago, since we're both northern cities, winter is coming, no pun intended. And there are a lot of homelessness encampments underneath the bridges, by the parks. So I just want to get your thoughts on this.
It'd be really nice if we could spend 1% of what we spent in Afghanistan to deal with the problem, but we don't have money.
Yeah, to deal with that situation. So I just want to get your thoughts on this, if it is happening or not, or if there's been talks about it or rumors of it. But we've seen firsthand what's happening in Los Angeles, where Jeffrey Katzenberg was speaking to the entire Los Angeles City Council, as well as aides to the mayor of Los Angeles. We're also seeing the same anti-homelessness laws, and we saw the same thing get copied in Austin in Texas. Is there talks about something like the anti-homelessness laws happening in Boston? Because right now there seems to be this warpath towards people who have no power whatsoever. Is there anyone that's trying to defend them? Is there any kind of talks about anti-homelessness crimes that are similar in Los Angeles happening in Boston?
There are several activists that have been calling on Governor Baker to do something about this issue. It has not been done. It has not been fixed. And so basically the response is to move further out. So we have people commuting into Boston 2 hours outside the city. It is absolutely ridiculous. And the traffic is terrible, I'm sure, as you can imagine. But that seems to be the response. If you can't afford it, then just move further and further out. And so now it's getting to the point where even cities 30 minutes, 40 minutes outside the city are now having the same issue. Now they're building all these condos. So this is a problem. They never got a handle on it. They never fixed this situation. And on top of that, our public transportation system is poor. So if you don't have a car, how are you supposed to get there? You can't really rely on the public transportation system.
Wow.
It's just so interesting. It's in its own morbid American way with gentrification, how it used to be that America's like, hey, all these poor people, just put them in the inner cities, just leave them there. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that looks like a nice area. Can we just get those people out of there, throw them into the suburbs? And we're just kind of on that. We're doing that again. We're in another era of doing the same thing again, is, hey, just get the wealthy people, bring them in the city. Everyone else, you could just move 2 hours out. Your life doesn't matter to us anyway, so we don't care that you have to work there. We don't care that it hurts your family. We don't care that you're being uprooted. It's America. We're a falling empire, and this is what we do.
Now, in regards to at least trying to find out what's happening in Boston. I know your network has been doing a lot of fantastic work in regards to talking about these issues. But when you're there, or you're at least getting messages from people who live in Boston. You said you have friends and people that that are being priced out. Has there been any kind of talk about doing a strike or doing a protest or a rally or something like that to really bring more attention to this? Because, again, Boston, just like Chicago, just like Los Angeles, just like Austin, these are major metropolitan cities, and it seems like these cities are only being designed and built now for a certain class of people, and it's not for the working class. But yet for years, how can we forget that, again, it was working people and generations of families that are the beating heart of our cities. Yeah. Has there been any kind of talk about doing any kind of pushback or really holding these politicians accountable?
There have been talks about a strike, doing a worker strike. The problem that we've run into is some people are really afraid, because if they leave their job, then they lose their health insurance. And this all goes back to healthcare. So when people say, why are you guys like marching for Medicare for all? There's other things to fight for. I'm like, no, you do realize that some people are tied to their jobs, can't leave their jobs because they don't have the health insurance. So this is a crucial problem, and it is one that really needs to be fixed. And it's sad that we have this happening right now in this country, especially in a place like Boston. And Boston used to be a working class city. It's not that anymore.
Yeah, and it's just the way you were describing that so eloquently reminded me of serfdom. It's like, oh no, you work on this land because we say so, and now it's you work at this job because you won't get your diabetes medication if you do anything else.
Right, and the thing is, all these people that are being kicked out of their homes, their apartments, they're not bad people, and yet there are stories of hearing the reason why they are homeless is because of medical debt, and that many of these people who are homeless on the streets actually go to work. They have jobs, but the wages don't pay enough to even live in the city that they're working in. It's madness. And the thing is, all this could have been avoided. We could have had the money to properly help out the American people. So I think maybe if we switch back subjects to what we're seeing right now, and I want to get your thoughts on this and really your opinion on these videos, these photographs that we're seeing of the United States leave Afghanistan. I mean, reports are showing in that trillions of dollars were wasted. The Afghan army completely disbanded. The president of Afghanistan just left town.
250,000 people dead.
Yeah, just can we get your...
Also, all our infrastructure money was left in Afghanistan, interestingly enough.
Trillions of dollars, but yet we can't do Medicare for all. We can't do housing. We can't do any of that. I want to get your thoughts on this because I'm pretty sure everyone's been having their own perspectives, and I think it's very important that we hear somebody from Fred Hampton leftists give their perspective in regards to what we're seeing in Afghanistan, 20 years of occupation.
Absolutely. This has been a complete failure. And I wish the United States government would just admit that instead of pretending like this is a big win, because it's not. We should have never been there in the first place. And we stayed there too long. What did you think was going to happen? You pull people out now. What did you think was going to happen? We've been there for over 20 years. Yeah. And for people who are saying, and I've seen this on Twitter as well, for people who are saying, well, we have to protect the women in Afghanistan. Are you kidding me? We can't even protect women here. We have women in the United States military that are being sexually assaulted and nothing is done about it. So how are we going to go to another country and protect women there when we can't even protect women here? And second of all, women in Afghanistan actually had more rights and more freedom before we intervened. And this is something my dad used to tell me, because my dad's ex-military. My dad used to say that, like, the people in those countries, a lot of times they are worse off after we intervened than they were before we came there. This is the thing. We can't police the world. We have to stop doing these forever wars. We can't even handle policing in our own country, but we're going to go control another country. It drives me crazy.
Mm-hmm. And again, we're seeing a lot of these corporate media pundits saying, "Oh, well, I'm surprised that we're leaving. Look at all these videos that we're seeing," and they're saying, "Well, maybe we should stay there longer." And then you have, again, I got to mention her name, Marianne Williamson, just tweeting out, "We gotta stay there." How much longer do we have to stay there? I mean, I mentioned this on yesterday's live stream and on today's show as well. We could have done universal basic income, federal jobs guarantee act. We could have done Medicare for all, student debt forgiveness, so much more.
Literally
Everything.
50 to 60 years of college tuition plus forgiving all of the college debt for the price of one failed Afghanistan.
So the thing is, what is needed now? I guess from your point of view, so that we can make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. Because again, we're still in Iraq, we're still in Libya, we're still in Syria, we're bombing Somalia. There's a genocide that's happening in Yemen as we speak. What kind of actions do activists and even citizen journalists have to do now to really bring more awareness to the American people who are, again, they're seeing history repeat itself and it looks just the same of the 1975 evacuation from Vietnam.
Absolutely. I think we have to continue telling people the truth. If we can interview people in those countries, which isn't always easy to do, but if we can do that, like people like Richie Medhurst, the reporting that he's doing, Aaron Mate, the reporting that he's doing, interviewing people in those countries so we can get their opinion and hear their stories, because oftentimes we don't get to do that, not through mainstream media. We're hearing the narrative that they want us to hear. And of course, they want us to be in these conflicts. They want us to be in war because it's beneficial from them, because they profit off of that too. And as long as we are intervening in other countries, that's another excuse for the United States government to say we have to continue to have a bloated military budget. It's just another excuse for that.
And I think that's a good segue into another subject that I want to talk to you about. And this is a video clip that you posted on your Twitter page where it's showing, I guess, Sally Mae, or I believe it had to deal with giving donations to Democratic and Republican lawmakers.
Wait, time out. You did reporting that showed that the Democrat and Republican Party are working together. I don't believe it.
Yeah, could you elaborate a little bit more about? Again, I believe it's like a 2-minute video clip that you posted on your Twitter page. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that? Because again, it kind of explains the nature of our lawmakers and just how out of touch they are and how blinded they are by money.
Yeah, so this is how I found this out. I was at a presentation about a year or two ago, and there were 2 representatives from Sallie Mae that were there that spoke. And someone raised their hand in the audience and said, well, with the issue with student loans, if student loans get canceled or whatever, how are you going to stay profitable, basically? And I'll never forget this. One of them said, well, we have representatives on the Hill that make sure that companies like us stay put. So when I got home, I did my research, and that was how I found that information. And I checked it again in 2020. And I said, well, what do you know? They were telling the truth. And a lot of this is on opensecrets.com, so you can look up and see who candidates are getting their money from. But the fact that Sallie Mae, which is one of the most predatory student loan companies in the country, they are donating to Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate, that is very concerning, because that goes to tell you, again, if this does come up for a vote, don't think it will, but if it comes up for a vote, I want you to pay attention to the people who vote against it.
Yeah. Wow. Again, fantastic work even reporting on it. And I urge everyone that's watching this live stream to check it out. Go ahead.
Appreciate the arrogance of the falling empire people to just be like, oh yeah, we bought off the government. Don't worry. We're safe. We have an end round for that. Don't worry.
So the thing is, though, what does it say to you as a citizen journalist, as a commentator, that, again, we have lawmakers that are okay with wasting trillions of dollars in failed wars, 20 years, but yet they turn around and say, well, we don't have money to do Medicare for all. We don't have money to do student debt forgiveness or affordable education or any other programs. How does that impact you? Because, I mean, again, we're seeing this, and so many of us are just wondering, well, why is this allowed to happen in the first place?
Yeah, it hits me pretty close because I also work in higher ed, and today we had to go back to campus, and I was just like, oh my God, here I go back to this hellhole. Because I'm constantly reminded Monday through Friday how these expenses are spent, where the money goes, how it's not going to places where we think it should go. And I also see students of mine that graduate and they can't get the jobs that they should get for the degree that they have. They're in a lot of student debt. And at the same time, because I do my show, there's just certain things, I can't really tell them how I really feel, because I work there.
Mm-hmm.
But if I could tell them how I really feel, I would tell them like, forget this. Just go to community college for 2 years. This will save you some money. And then you can transfer to a 4-year university. Oh, and by the way, you do not need to go to these expensive private universities. You're going to be in a lot of debt. You're not going to make the money that you owe for student loans. And that's what I see like constantly happening. So for me, it's just, I don't expect our government, our politicians to do what they say they're going to do. And I think that when you start to expect it, that's when you get disappointed. And I've been disappointed a lot, like in politics. I was disappointed a lot by Obama. That's what kind of put me on this journey. But we just can't really expect them to do it. And the only way we can bring about change, I think, is through the people. We have to do a general strike. And I talk about this often. Now, there's one scheduled for October 15th.
Right.
I don't know if there's enough mutual aid for that, because it has to last for a couple of months. As we know, like the coal miners in Alabama have been on strike since April, and they still have not been, their demands still have not been met. So we have to be prepared for this, but we have to do a general strike because the government doesn't control the country. Corporations control the country because they control the government.
I was going to say another thing that I remember hearing from someone who was actually a professor I did have, who was able to kind of very quietly say those kind of things to me was, well, first of all, exactly what you said, go to community college. Luckily, I actually went down that path. I went to community college, then I transferred in. But they also said that unless you're going to like an Ivy League level school, it almost doesn't even matter which school you go to, so you should just pick the one that is the most affordable.
And I think too, when we, especially as we're getting close to the end of the show, all these things that we want, they can be achieved. We do have the money. The United States has the money. And I think now more than ever, we need more citizen journalists, people like you, Sabrina. And, I asked you on the show, and I think it's a good way to wrap this up. And I want you to maybe just answer it again. And this is a two-part question. Number one, where can people find your content, the work that Fred Hampton Leftists are doing? Again, they're doing phenomenal work. Be sure to check out all their channels. Be sure to follow them all on Twitter as well. They're doing great work. But then number two, what do you want to say to people who are like you, Sabrina? Men, women, doesn't matter what color they are, or perhaps they're just waiting on the sidelines wondering, should I get involved? Should I step up to be a citizen journalist? What do you want to say to people who are maybe afraid to step up to do what you're doing?
Absolutely. Number one, if you're asking yourself that question, then the answer is yes, because that means that you're already considering it. You know that deep down inside somewhere you have something to say, so you have a voice and people should hear it. I will tell you, every now and then you may get attacked by people, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on YouTube or whatever. All you have to do is just silence that noise and focus on the issues. And I think that you'll go pretty far and you'll go really well. And also collaborate with people. That's really important. And you can find me on YouTube. I'm on the Fred Hampton Leftist podcast. You can also find me on Sabby Sabs, which is my channel. And you can find both of us on Rockfin as well.
Sabrina, that's a fantastic note to end it on. And something that, again, Fred Hampton Leftists, if anyone's not following them, check them out. They're doing great work, speaking truth to power, and we need more people nationwide to do what you guys are doing as well. Further collaborations, and it's always a real pleasure to have you on our show. Thank you again so much for being on our show, Sabrina. I want to thank all of our viewers and subscribers for joining us as well. Shout out to FaZe, shout out to Daniel for being my co-host, shout out to all of our moderators. We're seeing some very depressing images in Afghanistan. But now more than ever, we have to fight for that better future. Because if we don't, nothing will fundamentally change. Peace to you guys, and let us all do what we can to build a better future. Take care.
Bye.